What is it like to ride a Honda CB900, aka the Honda 919 Hornet? Well, in today's video, we're going to be taking this phenomenal machine out for the first ride of the season, and something I've been itching to do for quite some time now. With that being said, let's hop onto the bike and put some heat into it. My CB919 is a bike I searched for a long time, just because I thought they were cool. It was something I wanted to experience, something that I wanted to ride. A comfortable street fighter, naked sport bike from the early 2000s. A bike that just seemed like a nice little bike to ride around. And I say little, but it is a 919cc. In the United States, this bike is called the Honda 919 Hornet. Overseas, it's called the CB900F. We've done some first impressions and a couple of other videos on the channel about this bike last October, and well, I've put a few miles on it, a couple hundred miles on it. It's my first ride of the year with this bike, fired right into life because fuel injection. Gotta love fuel injection. This bike is very similar to the rest of the Honda CB lineup. If you've ever rode a CB 4-cylinder, a CB 750, or anything of the sorts, all the bikes have a very similar feel. And what I mean by these bikes ride pretty similar, I mean that the fact that they have the same weight distribution as each other. With the 4-cylinder setup, Honda likes to keep the 4-cylinders very tucked forward and closer to the middle of the motorcycle. That causes the bikes to have this middle kind of top heavy almost weight and balance distribution. Of course, you also have this massive gas tank between your legs here. The bike is really comfortable. You're in a very upright position. It's very much like a standard motorcycle in terms of the riding position. It is not compromised whatsoever. But the weight of the bike is tucked a lot further back than a lot of the other bikes that I have rode. It's also very middle balanced. A lot of the sport bikes like to keep their weight towards the ground as much as possible for weight distribution purposes. Most motorcycles, you'll find them to be kind of a little heavier down low, while this bike, the weight of the motor, everything, it's a lot higher. It gives a really weird sensation when you first get on it after not riding one of these bikes for a while. I'm kind of just getting back into feeling this bike out, not doing too crazy, letting it warm up, of course, as well. It's got dual calipers in the front, a single caliper in the rear, Nisfin brakes. The bike pulls very nicely. No complaints from the motor whatsoever, other than the fact, we've talked about this before, this bike vibrates a ton. And I'm noticing it once again after getting onto this bike after a while of not riding it. I have rode some other motorcycles this year so far. The bike has a lot of vibration coming from the tank area, the seat, you feel it underneath your bum, from the foot peg, the handlebar. This bike has a lot of vibration. Ways to fix the vibration are, of course, simple modifications like a handlebar. Different bar apparently changes this bike quite a bit, but it is a very vibrating ride. The first time I ever rode the bike, the day I bought it, I rode it about an hour on the highway back home, and immediately after stepping off of the bike, my hands were vibrating because of how much vibration it does have around that 70 mile per hour area. But even just putting it through some gears now. Hold on, a little bit of a rude interruption, but if you are enjoying the video so far, do me a huge favor, leave a like and subscribe to the channel because it goes a long way in helping the channel grow and continue to make great videos like this. Just kind of rolling it through, getting it up towards 4,000 RPM, give or take. Lots of vibration in my hands. But I also get a lot of vibration in between my legs. It definitely is a pretty buzzy ride. With that said, I think it does make up for that one downfall with everything else it does. Truly, I do think this is a phenomenal machine. I'm not trying to say that it's a bad machine because it's a little bit vibrating, but it does have that going on. I it's a pretty quick bike as well. It's not the fastest machine in the world, but I mean, it's more than adequate for anything you'd really want to do. For a street bike, it has all the power and more, in my opinion. Even though this thing is getting close to 20 years old now. Yeah, it's been that long since these bikes have been around. This is a 2007. This is the final year of production. In 04, 05, they added adjustment into the front suspension. The earlier models did not have that. I still have yet to play with it too much. Just kind of been riding it as it's set up. Suspension wise, I feel the bike to be very comfortable. Going through the country roads, it's got a decent amount of potholes out here, a lot of divots, tar snakes, everything. The bike handles them very nicely. I have no complaints from the suspension. It feels great around the corners. Not doing anything too crazy with this machine, but I could definitely see myself taking this bike out on a track day and not having any real complaints whatsoever. You're not really fighting it all too much, but there is one thing, you might have noticed it just a little bit when I was going around that corner. I'm a little hesitant because it's a new road, of course, but also the throttle. I've noticed this with Honda's fuel-injected bikes, not necessarily any other bikes I've really rode, but Honda's fuel-injected bikes from this era have this on-off switch throttle. You give it a little bit of throttle and it's like, okay, it rolls on a little rough, but you come off the throttle and it's a very like big snap. It can definitely unsettle the bike if you're not ready for it. My RC51 does the exact same thing, but if I kind of roll onto it a little bit here and I dump off of it, it's very twitchy. It's very, very twitchy. The bike is very twitchy. I've noticed that with the RC51 too. The RC51, you know, you give it a little bit of gas and the bike just kind of unsettles itself a little bit, which it is a little frightening the first time you might ride the bike. Definitely the first time that I took the bike out, I rode it around the block the other day. This is my first real ride, but I didn't ride it around the block, and I kind of just jumped onto it like I would with any of my other bikes, and it immediately kind of like lurched a little bit when I came off the throttle. I'm like, whoa, I should probably take a second or two to familiarize myself with the bike again, because that twitchiness is weird. It definitely is a little bit weird. It's not quite like any other bikes other than the 51 that I've rode. All my other fuel injected bikes don't have that kind of super twitchy feel when you get on and off. See, like even just shifting gears, it's a pretty big jolt that the bike gets if you're not accounting for it. It just is a really nice ride otherwise, though. It just feels like this is going to sound like a downside or me kind of roasting the bike a little bit, but it's just like a regular motorcycle that does everything you want it to do. It's fast. It's very fast. You know, some people complain about, oh, it's not like the quickest bike in the world. I wish it had a little bit more power. For me, I find it to be just adequate for anything I want to do on the road. But the bike just, it's not uncomfortable at all to ride. You just get on it, put it through some nice corners. What I found this bike to do phenomenal, something that I did with the bike when I first bought it, and I have no shame in admitting this, I instantly just started racking miles on it as a daily rider. I would take it on the highway, take it to work, and just keep just riding and riding and riding. I really didn't do anything too like back roady or anything like that. Buddy, control your dogs. But when I first bought the bike, I didn't really do too many, you know, crazy things with it. I took it on some few back roads now and then. I actually took it up on this trail one time with my buddies, but other than that, it was a lot of just commuting. I commuted a lot with this bike. I would simply just get on it, go to work, get on it to go wherever I needed to go. If I was going to a friend's house, whatever, I would just hop on this machine and just take it on my daily business. And I found this bike to just be really good at that, mainly because of the seating positioning. Oh my god, she's got some good power though. It's got some nice power. I'm also, you know, I've rode the last couple of days, but I've rode my Hawk and my GB500, so getting used to something with double the power or triple the power once again. One of the big reasons I do really love the bike is it's because it does remind me of my vintage CB750, my single overhead cam bike. It's just a nice, simple bike you want to take around cruising, but it's just like a new version of that bike. Fuel injected, way more power. I mean, way more power. A vintage CB750 cannot do that. Cannot do that at all. These bikes are super underrated too. I feel like I overuse that term just a little bit. You know, oh, this bike is really underrated, but genuinely, this and the Hornet, or this and the Hawk, excuse me, this is the Hornet. The Hornet and the Hawk, both for the price point these things are in. You can get a clean one of these for anywhere between $4,000 and $5,000. You can get a super clean Hawk for about $3,000. And for that price, there aren't really too many other bikes that perform like they do and are as fun as they are. This thing, the big thing about this bike is of course the reliability, not even the fact that it has a lot of power, or it's really comfortable, or it's rare, or it's any of those things. But reliability when it comes down to these CB900s is these things are bulletproof. People have put 20, 50, 80,000 miles on them without anything other than oil changes. So when we're talking about a bike that has that kind of reliability, has the performance and the fun factor that this bike does provide, this is definitely not a beginner bike. Like, you can get a bike, you can step up from your beginner bike onto a motorcycle like this for half the price of a new beginner bike. Motorcycle prices, along with everything, has just exploded. But this motorcycle and a decent amount of used bikes from this era are just some of the most phenomenal, fun riders era, drivers era bikes that there are just out there on the market. You know, a lot of people, including myself, I love my vintage bikes, I love my vintage products, I love all the old stuff, right? It's very clear I love my old bikes. I don't own any bike that's newer than 2018. A lot of the newer bikes, they've got to the point where, unfortunately, there's just so much going on that, you know, yes, it's fun, they have a ton of power, but they do lose a little bit of soul. When it comes to a motorcycle that has 200 plus horsepower, or even anything over 150 horsepower, having those things, well, it saves lives. You know, ABS, traction control, those things are definitely, I'm not saying they're bad things at all. Don't get me wrong, I love the fact that, you know, we're innovating, we're putting new stuff on, we're making it so that riders can get onto motorcycles, new riders can get onto bikes and be perhaps a little less scared, reducing accidents, all of those things. All of that is great. A lot of stuff on newer motorcycles, the screens, the different modes, the overstimulation of motorcycling that is happening right now, this bike doesn't have that. It's just an analog motorcycle that you click the start button, you pull the clutch, pull the throttle, and you just go. But if I'm going out and I'm choosing to buy a motorcycle as one of my only bikes, as something I want to get on and just ride and ride and ride, the early 2000s is the era of bike I would choose. And this CB900 here is one of those bikes that I think embodies this era of cycling the best. There are a few newer bikes that are 3-4 years old that have recently been phased out that kind of embody the same thing. I think the Kawasaki Z900 Cafe, I think that's another bike, even the regular one, the non-cafe version as well. I think even that is it's a bike that embodies what this bike is about. Probably gonna get off this road. It's a little too gravelly. All the dirt and everything from the winter is really collected here. You know, but genuinely, I think this era of motorcycling is just such a great era to buy from. Horsepower, modern day amenities that you'd want, while also still having a little bit of soul, a little bit of analog going on. Just listen to that thing buzzing away. I think this bike sounds great as well. I think I'm gonna leave the video there. A little bit of what it's like to ride. As you can see, when I was talking about towards the beginning of the video, the motor is quite pushed back and it's a lot higher. The bike is a little bit taller than a lot of the other bikes I've rode, a lot of the other bikes I own, and the weight is kind of like all right there in a nice package. Subscribing to the channel, commenting, leaving a like goes a long way, and I appreciate everyone who watches the videos. I'm gonna continue going out and riding this machine. I'll see you guys in the next one.